If you haven't been living under a rock for the past 12 years, the chances are that you would have heard of Bitcoin by now. Since its inception in 2009, Bitcoin has slowly but surely entered the mainstream of global finance, and today, major companies, investment firms, and even countries all hold Bitcoin. But what the hell is Bitcoin? In today's video, we want to help you understand what Bitcoin is in just under 12 minutes and in the simplest possible terms. And if you watch this video in its entirety, we guarantee you that you will have a better understanding of Bitcoin than 90% of the people around you. But before we understand Bitcoin, it's important that we understand what money is. At its core, money is simply a tool that we use to store and exchange value. For example, if Darren does some work for John, John gives Darren money in exchange for the time and energy he spent doing this work. Darren can then use this money to buy goods or services he needs from someone else. Now, throughout history, people have used different materials to represent money. Things such as salt, wheat, seashells, tobacco, and of course, gold and silver have all been used as money. However, for something to represent value, people have to trust that thing is indeed valuable and that it will stay valuable long enough for them to redeem that value at some point in the future. In that sense, at some point in history, people realized that gold and silver was the perfect form of money. Gold and silver is rare, it's durable, and it's divisible, meaning that you can break it into smaller pieces, and it's also fungible, meaning that 10 grams of gold in your pocket has the same value as 10 grams of gold in someone else's pocket. But as time went on and our economies grew larger and larger, people realized that using actual physical gold and silver as money was not at all practical or even efficient. Think about it. If you're buying a house for $2 million, physically carrying $2 million worth of gold to pay for it would be a nightmare. So this is why paper money or currency was invented. And here's how that worked. A bank or government would take possession of your gold and in exchange give you a receipt certificate, which we also call a bill, for the value of that gold. And before World War I, if you ever wanted your gold back, all you had to do was take this paper money back to the bank and they would give you back your gold for the value of bills that you bought back. This made much more practical sense since you could carry $1,000 worth of gold as bills or paper money instead of carrying all that actual gold around. Now, as time went on and due to a number of macroeconomic factors which are too complex to get into in this video, this bond between paper money and the gold it stood for was gradually broken. Basically, the governments asked people to forget about this gold and simply place their trust in the government's promise that this paper money was worth something. So people continued to trade using these pieces of paper which were essentially backed by nothing but the government's word, and this is how fiat currencies were born. All paper money we use today, be it American dollars, euros or Japanese yens, are all fiat currencies. In Latin, the word fiat means by decree, so these currencies only have a value because the governments and the central banks issuing them say so. This is what we call legal tender. This simply means that these coins or notes have to be accepted when offered as payment because the government and the law say so. Now, fiat currencies have two main issues. One is that they are highly centralized, meaning that they can only be issued and controlled by a centralized authority, in this case, the government and the central bank. The second issue with fiat currencies is that they are not limited by quantity. The governments and central banks are free to print as much money as they want, whenever they want. The problem with this is, however, whenever the government prints more money, they are essentially taking value away from the money that you already hold. This is what we call inflation. For example, when the economic crash of 2008 happened, the United States government printed trillions of new dollars and handed them all to the banks. And guess what the banks did? They paid themselves huge bonuses. This is the problem with the control of money being under one central authority. Absolute power corrupts, and absolute power being in the hands of a few institutions is extremely dangerous. But what choice do we have? Without a central authority to keep account of all this money, there is no way of keeping track of who owns what. This problem is exacerbated by the fact that most of today's money is digital. Imagine that a dollar is represented by a digital file. What's to stop someone from copying this file over and over to create 1,000,000 more dollars? This is what is referred to as a double spend problem. The solution that banks use today to tackle this is a centralized solution. They keep a centralized ledger that keeps track of who owns what. Everyone has an account, and this ledger keeps a tally for each account. So we all trust the banks, and the banks trust their computers to maintain this ledger accurately. But what happens when this trust is broken? For example, during the 2017 Wells Fargo scandal, it was uncovered that bank employees secretly created millions of unauthorized bank and credit card accounts in order to inflate the bank's revenue stream. So much for trusting the banks and the governments, right? But what's the solution? Well, this is where Bitcoin comes into the picture. In October of 2008, an anonymous programmer going under the name of Satoshi Nakamoto published a document proposing a way of creating a decentralized currency called a Bitcoin. This system claimed to create digital money that solved the double spend problem without the need of a centralized authority. But how does Bitcoin do this? Bitcoin achieves this by using a transparent ledger that isn't controlled by any one centralized authority. What does this mean? Well, let's compare Bitcoin to a traditional bank. In today's world of digital money, the bank maintains a ledger that keeps track of all balances and transactions. However, this ledger is not transparent and is stored on a centralized computer. This means that we can't take a sneak peek at it to make sure that everything is in order. We simply have to trust the bank. Bitcoin, on the other hand, maintains a decentralized ledger that is stored on all computers, also known as nodes, connected to the Bitcoin network. This means that any person can take a peek at any time at this ledger and see all the transactions and balances on it. This is also what is known as a blockchain. Let's say Darren wants to pay John 1 Bitcoin to buy a house. Darren simply transfers this Bitcoin from his wallet, which is like a digital address, to John's wallet, and this transaction is noted immediately on the blockchain. All the computers on the Bitcoin network now note that Darren's wallet has a balance of 1 less Bitcoin and John's wallet has a balance of 1 more Bitcoin. John can then send this Bitcoin to Mary, and that transaction is then noted on the blockchain as well, and so on and so forth. This decentralization also means that the Bitcoin network is virtually impossible to hack. This is because each computer participating in the Bitcoin network has its own copy of the ledger that is constantly being updated. So to take down the network, you would have to take down the thousands of computers participating in the network all at once. Say for example, Darren pays John 1 Bitcoin and now has a balance of 0 Bitcoin. He wouldn't be able to fraudulently send someone else another Bitcoin because the entire blockchain now knows that John has 0 Bitcoin in his wallet. This is how Bitcoin solves the double spend problem. Another great thing about this decentralization is that it cuts out the need for any middlemen like banks when people need to move their money about. For example, John could send Darren $1 billion in Bitcoin in a matter of minutes without ever needing to get any middleman involved and with complete security. This can save people millions of dollars in transactional fees. This is also a huge deal for the roughly 1.5 billion people in this world who have no access to banking services due to their location or life circumstances. All they would technically need is an internet connection and a Bitcoin wallet on their phone or computer. The other major issue with fiat currencies that Bitcoin seeks to solve is the issue of supply. Unlike fiat currencies, there will only ever be a total of 21 million Bitcoin ever. This supply of 21 million Bitcoin is gradually released to the network as rewards to participating computers for validating the transactions on the network. This is what is also known as Bitcoin mining. This means that Bitcoin is effectively inflation resistant. So if you were to be paid in Bitcoin, there is no chance of any entity creating more Bitcoin in the future that can erode the value of your Bitcoin. This is why companies like MicroStrategy are now turning billions of dollars of their cash reserves into Bitcoin. And here's the great part. Each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million smaller units known as Satoshis or sats. So you don't have to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation or an investor to own Bitcoin. You can simply buy $10 worth of Bitcoin or 1 million worth of Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin is trading at around $60,000, which might sound like a lot. But remember, currently only around 2% of the world's population owns Bitcoin. So we are actually quite early with this technology. We also should mention here that Bitcoin being so early in the adoption cycle is also a huge reason why Bitcoin prices tend to fluctuate so much. It's not uncommon for Bitcoin to pump or dump by 5% or more in a single day. However, this represents a massive opportunity for gains for those who are willing to put the time and effort into learning about Bitcoin. But remember, if you're going to trade Bitcoin in the short term, you could make millions or you could lose it all. In the long term, it's starting to look more and more like Bitcoin is being recognized and proving itself as a hard store of value and an excellent hedge against inflation. For example, if you had invested $1,000 in Bitcoin in October of 2010 and simply forgot about it, your investment would be worth a whopping $750 million. Isn't that insane? Now this is simply a very basic overview of what Bitcoin is and how it works. There are tons of great free resources on YouTube that you can use to learn more about the nitty-gritty details of Bitcoin. But we hope that this video gave you a comprehensive start into the world of Bitcoin and motivated you to learn more about this digital currency, which seems to have the potential of changing the global financial system for the better. If you found this video useful, please do give it a like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll do our best to keep bringing you more educational content like this. I'll see you on the next video.